afternoon. My name is Johannes Frühhoff. I'm founder and CEO at Biolabs, and today I'm coming to you from our beautiful booth at Bio San Diego 2026, where we're hosting the B.empowered podcast. Today's guest is Nagayama from Daiichi Sankyo, and he is now here in San Diego for Daiichi and our key partner in this relationship. Taka, thank you for making time for us.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. This is interesting, the podcast.
Thank you. Maybe to start, introduce yourself, what you do at Daiichi Sankyo, and how you work with Biolabs.
Okay, so my name is Nagayama. Currently the head of the research in San Diego, and my career was that I joined that Daiichi Sankyo in 2000. At that time, I was joined that research lab as a scientist, then working on the drug discovery in the cardiovascular metabolic area. But at that time, actually, our company focusing on the small molecular compound only at the time, almost 25 years ago. Then I got the chance to study abroad. Then I went to that Johns Hopkins to learn more about the basic science. Then back to that Daiichi Sankyo again. Then also that conducting that still that drug discovery. Then after that, I had a chance to move to that business development. Then I learned this kind of that networking and the discussion with that external partner. After that, back to that research function. At that time, Daiichi Sankyo is currently that successfully developed that ADC.
Yeah.
However, that our company is growing up very quickly. So, but it's hard to increase at the research in Tokyo, double. Then if you look at that, not only Japan but also at the U.S. or Europe, there are so many ecosystem already established. So then our company decided to open that office in the Boston and Munich in 2024. Then last year we also opened that office in the San Diego.
Excellent.
Then at that time, of course, when I was in the Boston, of course, we collaborated with that lab center. Then I learned a lot how those kind of that lab center or the biolab supporting the startup company. Then that's why even if we moved to that San Diego, I like to start the collaboration with the biolab San Diego.
Yeah, thank you so much. And so, how do you, you're a global company. Now you have these external innovation hubs in 3 places.
Yes.
How do you balance that between sort of the local engagement and the global need that you have as Daiichi Sankyo?
Yeah, great. Frankly speaking, basically, flexible, because if you look at each ecosystem, the strength is a little bit different in Boston and also at San Diego or even Europe.
Yeah.
So that's why actually we are very much empowered. I mean that based on that strengths in each region, then we will pick up that startup company. However, of course, we are the global company. At least once a month, we have that sharing that what kind of the opportunity we are working on, etc. The sharing. Then try to achieve that our the goal in the for global Daiichi Sankyo.
I think this process, and this wasn't in the prepared questions, so I apologize, we can cut it out later.
No problem at all.
But it would be very interesting for our startups to learn from you what you're looking for and how that process goes. Because all of them would like to have a relationship with your company. So what is it that you're looking for in a startup? What is it that you're looking for in a founder team?
I see. Of course, again, that the based on that region. I mean, Boston preference and San Diego preference a little bit different, and Munich too. So our preference, I mean, that research in San Diego is much focusing on the biologics, especially that because we are the ADC company, and currently that T-cell engager or other approach is showing up. Then we'd like to catch up those kind of one, and also that we have to generate that beyond that the ADC. Then there are so many opportunities around that, not just San Diego, but also San Francisco, Seattle, or even Vancouver.
So you cover all of these
All
from
of
San
the
Diego?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Boston is that very well dense.
Yeah.
It's very easy just by walk.
Yeah.
However, that of course, even the San Diego, we need a car.
Yes.
However, that at least that we like to cover that San Francisco, Seattle, and Vancouver. That's but not short flight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about stage of companies that are interesting to Daiichi Sankyo. When can I start? When I'm an entrepreneur, when can they start calling you? Do they have to have clinical data, or do they have to have what is it that is your filter
Yeah.
for meetings?
That's the important question. When I was in the BDG, at that time I was scouting that startup company or biotech. Then I will introduce that those kind of the company to the researcher in Tokyo. However, that researcher always asking me that the more data, more data, more data.
course.
Then the reason why that we are established a Boston and the San Diego office is that we have to support that startup company, because startup company sometimes that not so much resource, not just like the money, but also human resource. So and the biolab also supporting those kind of stuff. Then that's why our role is that not focusing on the asset. Of course, that our BD team are looking for asset in licensing. However, my role is that initially that if the startup company who has generating the innovative technology or modality or even the technology platform, even they don't have that asset, that's fine. As long as the technology is intriguing.
Okay. So it can be early, even
Yep.
before they have a development candidate identified. What are the ways, and I know that you're familiar with the golden ticket.
Right.
The golden ticket, maybe you can explain how we use it. It's a tool that we have established with some of our pharmaceutical partners, including Daiichi Sankyo, to select startup companies, and then they can get a free year of lab space at biolabs. Can you explain your experience with the golden ticket system?
Yeah, I think that of course, that the main purpose to support that startup company, because if they become that winner, of course that the biolab prepare that the bench for them for 1 year. So, however, that another purpose for us is that when they look at that application, then we can understand that the current startup situation, like which area, which modality is focus at this moment. Then and also that some of them is not fitting to that the Daiichi Sankyo. Some of them is fitting to Daiichi Sankyo. However, the interesting is that each company has each preference.
Yeah.
Even if that Daiichi Sankyo is not, that is not a little bit different, but some of the pharma company like that.
Yes.
So that is that reality.
Yeah. Have you picked a company yet in the golden ticket program?
We did last year.
Okay.
Two company.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. But at that time.
Did you see good companies in there?
Yeah. Actually, that the same as at the Boston.
Okay.
Even if that
Good quality in San
very
Diego,
quality,
like in Boston?
yes, very good quality.
That's great.
That is very surprising for me.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you for that endorsement of San Diego.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the difficulties that startups have, right? You work a lot with young companies. What do you see? Maybe also you have experience in Japan and now in Boston and San Diego. What are the difficulties that the founders are facing in each of these places?
That's actually, I think that most of the startup company, if they need that investment, definitely they need that asset.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's hard. Even if that they generate or develop that great technology, but if they don't have that asset, it's hard to get that investment. So, however, sometimes that asset is not fitting to that the pharma company. So that's why the reason why I joined that biolab is to discuss with the startup company, navigate to the asset which would be that the pharma company allowed us, based on that their technology.
So you're able to give the companies guidance
Yes,
from
yes.
a big company point of view,
Yep.
what they should be developing.
Right.
Are they listening to you? Do they follow your advice?
Yep, most
Yeah?
of the case. Yeah, of course,
Okay.
that they access to that another farmer. However, that interestingly, actually at the yesterday meeting, then that's the very early startup. Then they are asking us that a lot of questions, which data they needed for your
Good.
company.
Good, good,
Yeah.
good.
Then that is that reality. Then they like to understand that customer that
Is farmer.
yeah, farmer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually the great culture in the especially the startup field.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, we have only one or two more questions left. We call this podcast "Driven by Purpose," and I know that also in a way applies to your company, Daiichi Sankyo.
Yep.
Can you tell us what you interpret this motto?
Yeah, it's how of course that we like to save that patient.
Yeah.
Then by using that novel technology, but back to that the reason why we successfully generate that ADC, that is a very important actually footprint for us. Actually, do you know that actually Daiichi Sankyo was merged from that Daiichi and Sankyo. Yep.
To the one.
Yes. The Daiichi had so many experience in the topoisomerase inhibitor. Then the Sankyo has experience with the biologics.
Biologics.
Then at that time our company that there are so many great medicinal chemists. That's actually finally developed that linker technology. Then combined that ADC. Then the successfully that we launched that two drug and also other one. That is that of course the same company, but the collaboration. Each company had each strength. So
Yes.
that's actually what we like to do.
Yes.
That finding that the startup company who has a new modality or new technology combined with us. Then that generates that not beyond that existing drug.
Yes.
So that's
and I know
it.
that at the beginning people were very skeptical of ADC as a modality.
Yeah.
Now it's mainstream and it cures many patients. Right?
At that time, our company is much focusing on the cardiovascular.
Yeah.
However, that that's always happening like go up and go down. Yeah. But our oncology research, keep that question and try to solve that current issue, even if that at that time actually ADC is that going down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Around that 2010. But still, that our research continue that those kind of research to solve that the issue at the time. So that is a
Yeah.
long way.
And I think Daiichi Sankyo can be really proud for having established this new class of molecules, and now, of course, it's very, very hot. Many people are pursuing it. Well, I want to thank you for being a great supporter of startups, first in Boston and then in San Diego, and for being a great partner with Biolabs. And thank you for spending time with us on this podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You.